Warning, this episode may contain content that is not suitable for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome to LED Live, the show where we talk about pop culture in light of the Bible. Today, we're going to ask the question, does consuming violent media make you more violent?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Well, welcome everyone to our show. Before we jump into our topic, we want to mention a couple of things. We are on Patreon, and we really appreciate our Patreon supporters. You can go on there and check out all the different levels. There are many prizes, if you will, for people who sign up at different levels. You know, $1 you get early access, $5 you get behind the scenes, $15 you get an exclusive t-shirt that is a producer t-shirt. We don't print it for anybody else. And you can look at the rest of the rewards on Patreon. So make sure you check that out. We also want to let you know that we are more than just YouTube. We have a website. You can check us out on littlelightstudios.tv, and we have several products there. We've produced many full-length documentaries on, for example, superheroes and cartoons and video games and just the effects of media on your mind. One of those in particular is called Pseudology. It is a full-length documentary on how you are affected by media from a very scientific perspective. So we encourage you to check that out. And we also have digital downloads on Vimeo. So you want to take a look at those if you prefer the digital downloads. They're really great for people who are overseas and don't want to wait on a DVD to get to their door. Now, another thing that we do is we go out and speak. Now, Scotty, you're wearing a t-shirt there.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
I want to represent the Philippines. I just got this t-shirt actually at the Scarborough Church up in Toronto, Canada. And had a great weekend speaking up there. So if you don't know, we actually go to different churches throughout the year. Keith, how many churches have we been to this year?
Oh, about 24.
24. We've been to probably 4 or 5 different countries. So if you want us to come to your church and talk on media issues, social media, any of those, we have a lot of information that we can share with your church. You can go to our website, littlelightstudios.tv, and check out the booking request.
That's right. I was just in Connecticut, so hello to everybody in Connecticut. And we also want to talk to you about Super Tonic. Take it away, Scotty.
Tommy's Tonic. Today's show is actually sponsored by this awesome product. My brother makes it. It's called Tommy's Tonic. It's a super tonic. It's juiced garlic, ginger, habanero, white onion, and horseradish. Let me tell you, if you have a cold and you need to get rid of this cold, this stuff will burn those bugs out of your breath. That's actually really not that bad, but really it's one of those products that actually totally works. And as we're coming into the flu season and a lot of people are getting sick, we have this available on our website. It's awesome. Tommy's Tonic. Check it out.
Yeah. Another thing that's really helpful is just don't eat sugar. All right. So today we are going to talk about media violence. As you know, there is violence in the media. There's all kinds of violence in the media. And so just to get started, though, I want to do a little bit of an icebreaker with you guys. I know we've been starting to do these little fun things in the beginning of our show. I have no idea how this is going to go. So there may be bugs. If they are, we're just going to cut to the point where everything works out, okay?
Yeah.
So here's the icebreaker. We're going to do a poll, and here's the QR code, but I can also send you guys a link on Slack. And the poll is going to be, I'm going to have you guys look at different movie posters, and I want you to tell me whether you think it's rated R or PG-13.
Just off of the poster.
Just off of the poster.
Okay. I like this.
Cool.
All right. So, yeah, you're going to need a phone, Mikey.
Okay.
Let's go get it. Die Hard, 1988.
Rated R.
I say rated R.
Okay.
PG-13.
Live Free or Die Hard, 2007.
I saw that.
I think
PG-13.
all the Die Hards are going to be rated R.
Really?
I bet you it's going to be PG-13.
Yeah,
just
same.
knowing that like violence is just getting worse and worse. So I'm going to guess PG-13.
Because it's 2007?
That's right.
It is PG-13.
13.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Disturbia. Every killer lives next door to someone.
Rated R.
Yeah,
that's
there's
rated
just
R.
so many
That's
rated
gonna
R
be rated
movies. I just say rated R. On that
It's
fact.
PG-13.
Taken. PG-13.
2008.
Yeah, I'd say 13.
Yeah, 13.
PG-13.
Watching a lot of movies.
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight's PG-13.
Rated R.
Yeah, it is PG-13.
I think every Terminator movie was rated R, I think.
Now, Terminator,
I don't
I don't
think
know.
so.
So is this
The first one was.
Which number was this? The first one might have been rated R.
This is
2009.
not the last
So
one.
2009, I'm going to guess
It's
PG-13.
somewhere in the middle.
The End Begins.
I'm going to guess PG-13 again because the violence is getting worse.
Dude, look at his face.
I don't get that. You're rating it
Because
lower
violence,
rating
because we're more exposed to violence, so they're going, oh, this isn't bad. This isn't that bad.
But they have a standard, like if it has X, Y, and Z, it's rated
This is
R.
actually good stuff.
that would be an old standard.
No, okay. Have you seen the movie? Because there's
We're
things
gonna get
like,
into
you know,
all this. I have not
if
seen
the
the movie. We're
blood
gonna
is
get into all
blue,
this.
it doesn't matter
So what do
like
you
how
think?
the person dies, just that it wasn't real blood. It's PG-13.
Even if the head explodes and it's blue blood.
So this
That's
one
ridiculous.
is PG-13.
Told you.
The first one
I'm
was
on a
rated R, and
roll.
it was cheesy.
I'm on a roll.
But
Sucker Punch,
PG-13.
2011.
I'm going to say rated R.
PG-13.
It was PG-13.
Interesting.
But there was a lot of people who actually said this movie should have been rated R.
Yeah, because I remember seeing the trailer for this. I did not see the movie, but it was pretty violent.
PG-13.
Man of Steel.
That's PG-13.
PG-13.
Yeah, you guys got that one right.
Meh.
The Lone Ranger.
I'm going to say PG-13.
Yeah, PG-13.
Rated R.
Tracers.
PG-13.
Yeah, I would say PG-13. Judging on that,
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like a...
maybe.
that's all I know about it.
Originally rated R.
Hmm.
But they changed this one too.
I never
Because
even
they
heard of that
PG-13.
one.
blue blood.
It's broken.
Well,
This is
let's get to this discussion, right? And the question is there a link between media and violence? What do you think?
You know, looking at some of the studies that I've seen that came out about countries that didn't have any kind of media whatsoever, and all of a sudden, like we're talking like African countries or something, and they introduced, I think it was like Sesame Street or something, like something benign like that, and they all of a sudden started having problems in society.
I heard about that.
So I'm going to bet that there's got to be some kind of effect. I know that in the United States, we have a lot of exposure to violence, and I don't know. It's so hard to say. I don't know definitively.
When you did the video game one, we talked about how like we thought there was more violence here than there was in China or Japan or something. But then we looked it up, and they're like super censoring over there.
Yeah.
Like they don't even let you show skeletons and things like that. So
Yeah.
I
don't
think
know.
there's a link between media and our tolerance towards violence. You know,
Yeah.
what we pass as okay, and what we actually get offended by or react to.
And I would almost say if things progress, like it got really bad, like the Holocaust bad, you know what I mean? Like I think we would react to that really fast because we're probably all just super desensitized.
But then you see people whipping out their phones when there's a fight going on or somebody like
Exactly.
Kids drowning
dude.
and they're like videoing it.
Laughing.
Like, yeah, I mean, we I think have lost our connection with
Yeah.
human life.
We're not as sensitive as we used to be. Well, let's get into this thing. In 2018, Parents Television Council, they published a report about media and violence. And what they looked at was the years 2013 to 2017 when they were doing this report. And here's some of what they were looking at. They said, in 2000, the American Academy of Pediatrics, this is one group, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Psychological Association, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Family Physicians. Okay, we got a list
everybody.
going here. And the American Psychiatric Association. All these groups, they issued a joint statement. Okay? And this statement declared that reports from the Surgeon General's office and from the National Institute of Mental Health and numerous studies conducted by leading figures, okay, we're really building here, said our medical and public health organizations point overwhelmingly to a causal connection between media violence and aggressive behavior in some children.
Yeah.
Now, they're not saying every child, and they're not saying that it necessarily affects them the same way, but they are saying there is a link here. And this is based on 30 years of research.
I mean, I would just say like all the problems that we have with bullying and even the kids not caring about the well-being of the other kids. You know, you look at like what happened in the 50s or 40s or 30s. The kids weren't like probably straight mean like they are today. I mean, they're passing around notes in high school, like that documentary we watched trying to sign a petition for kids to commit suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just terrible.
Yeah.
So I think that's...
Well, there's the phrase copycat for a reason. And just look at a bunch of kids that like come out of the movie theater after watching some action-packed movie. They're all like,
Right. And you got a movie like Joker, and now all of a sudden they're putting armed guards at the theater because they're worried about people reacting to it. So,
But there's no connection.
Yeah.
So this report, they wanted to take a heavy look at specifically gun violence, okay, and media. So here's one of the things they concluded. They said PG-13 movies exceed the amount of gun violence in the top grossing rated R movies.
That's
And I thought that was kind of surprising because you would think, rated R, more violent. But as I was going through this information, what I was discovering is that usually films that are rated R are rated R more for sexuality than they are violence.
Interesting.
So it's not that films aren't rated R for violence. Usually they are, but if you look at a bunch of films that are rated R, look at one that's just rated R for violence that doesn't have any sexuality in it. That's probably not a very long list, right? Because you usually got a mix of everything. So they concluded, and this was from Annenberg Public Policy Centers from the University of Pennsylvania. So PG-13 movies exceeded the amount of gun violence.
And I bet you that there's more PG-13 movies because it opens themselves up to a wider audience.
This is an interesting point. We're actually going to get to that. So hold on to that thought. So what they did is they took a look at, 2013 and they compared it to 2017 because around this time the government was like, in 2013, they're like, man, this gun violence thing is starting to get real. Like we need to do something about this, right? And so the government was calling for better regulation and what do we do? So they said, okay, the government's calling for better regulation in 2013. So what happens over the next 4 years? Does anything change? Right? So they wanted to see, does anything change? Here's what they found out. They said in 2017, the total number of violent incidents in 1 month of television and the percentage of programs containing violence and the percentage of programs containing violence and guns and the percentage of violent programs with ratings didn't adequately reflect the program's level of violence. They said they all increased. All increased. Okay.
I would bet that, I'll let you finish first before I comment.
There were fewer episodes of entertainment programming aired during the study period in 2017 than 2013, which means even that the concentration of violence was greater.
So yeah, there was like a loss of translation. So summarize it. You're saying they showed less violence for a while, but violence rose anyway?
No. So to summarize, they're saying in 2017, all the markers for violence went up. So even though the government's calling for greater regulation, over 4 years, it didn't go down. If anything, it went up and the concentration was greater in 2017.
In film production.
In television. I think this is particularly in television programming.
Wow.
Okay, we're not even talking about movies yet. This is in television programming.
Now, if I had to guess why, it seems like just human psychology. It's like if we get addicted to something, you just need more and more and more. So I think we've gotten used to a certain level of stimulus. And then all of a sudden it's like, we need the scenes crazier and bigger. I mean, I was watching this thing on the, what's the Bollywood guys, and like the crazy stunt scenes that they do in Bollywood that are just so out there ridiculous. But they need that kind of stimulation because they've probably seen
Pushing
everything
the
before.
envelope.
Yeah, it's just constantly, how can we go bigger and better and whatever.
You gotta outdo the next guy. One of the things that they concluded was that the rating system, okay, it's what has allowed violent content in the PG-13 films.
Of course.
Right? So they're saying it's the ratings people, it's their fault, right? They're the ones that allowed this. Now I want to look at statistically something that you touched on just a little bit ago, and you were saying, there's probably more PG-13 movies. In all actuality, there are fewer PG-13 movies compared to rated R movies
Interesting.
that have ever been made.
Interesting.
So
Seriously.
the bulk of movies that have been made, 58% have been rated R. And this is since they've had a rating system in place.
It's because parents are less caring. They're like, that's a rated R movie. I'll take my kids.
Maybe it makes it more exciting.
Which means when you say that that there are more acts of violence in the PG-13 film category, it's super concentrated then compared to rated R films. right?
This is very surprising. Wow.
It is very surprising. One of the ways that we measure violence is with kill count, okay, in movies. So I want to show you some numbers here, okay? I thought this was really interesting. Here's some numbers from yesteryear. 1941, we'll look at by decade, okay? Sergeant York had a kill count of 83.
In one movie.
In one movie, yeah.
Did
So
you
this is in
go
the
to that
40s.
movie's premiere?
Yeah,
Wasn't that movie kind of like a wholesome movie though, right?
Honestly, I have not seen it.
Okay.
So
I
could not
remember
tell you.
movies like, do you ever remember a movie called Hot Shots?
Yes.
It was kind of making fun of like
Yeah.
a lot of
It was
like,
part due, remember?
Yeah,
It
and
had
they would have the
more
kill
than
count.
Rambo,
Yeah, they-
more than Terminator.
That's right. There was actually a
Wow.
graph that
Yeah.
was going.
But it's
Okay.
comedy death.
Oh my goodness.
In the 50s, it was Godzilla with 111. Okay. Now watch how it jumps into the 60s. Just a few years later, the Alamo, 525
Wow.
in one
The
film.
Alamo?
The
Yeah.
Alamo. The next decade, the greatest kill count was from the movie Duck, You Sucker. Okay, 1971 had a kill count of less than the Alamo. It was at 509. And we get to the 80s, 1989. There's a movie called Glory. Seems like I might have seen that, but I don't remember.
Denzel Washington.
Okay, yeah, I probably did.
So it was about the Civil War.
Yeah, that's
Super
right.
bloody and violent.
Oh, well, then that makes sense.
584
Right.
was the kill count.
But if you just consider those numbers, I mean, think about it. A movie is only 90 minutes long. So if you
Roughly.
kill 500 people, what are you killing them every 10 seconds? You know, it's like,
Now these are acts of violence that you could witness on screen, like it plays out before you. We're not talking about, they said they killed so many people and you didn't see it happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
Or
just
is
keep
it
that
like
in mind.
individual or a mass? Like if you toss a bomb into a building and there was like a
Well,
1,000
yeah.
people.
If you toss
Is
a
one
bomb into
better
a
than the
building
other?
and you watch it, then it's supposed to count. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
you see the person die.
Yeah, if you've seen it die. By the time we get to the 90s, it's Braveheart, and the number jumps quite a bit. It's at 1,297.
Wow.
Okay, so it's more than double.
I remember kids in high school watching that movie 50 times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've probably seen it, 20, 30 times, and it was super violent.
Yeah. We get to 2000. Okay, the sum of all fears. 2,922.
Whoa.
Now we jumped again
I've never even heard of that movie.
quite a bit.
Title sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Like some horror film.
Man, no. It seems like the sum of all fears. I could be wrong on this, so don't hate me, viewers, if I get this wrong. But I thought it was like in like that Tom Clancy series.
Oh, okay.
Like one of those. What was that character? Like Jack Ryan series. I think that was a Ben Affleck film.
Wait, you missed a major point. Go back.
I missed a major point.
Yeah.
What's my major point?
You have Braveheart rated R,
Yeah.
1,200. But then the sum of all affairs is PG-13.
It is, and I'm kind of leading up to that a little bit. Yeah,
Mm.
it is
That's insane.
PG-13 and has more than twice the kill count
Right.
Wow.
in the film. Okay, so now I want to show you greatest of all time list, top 10. Okay, of all decades since there's been ratings. Okay, well maybe even before there's been ratings because Sergeant York was in 1941. They didn't start ratings until the
Rated G.
60s. So here we go. Top 10 kill counts. 2012, The Avengers. How many do you think?
Oh, the Avengers?
Half the planet, right?
Right. Yeah, billions. I don't know.
Okay, here's the number. 1,019.
Wow.
Interesting.
Doesn't seem quite so bad as some of the others that we've seen on our list. Number 9, Braveheart. Okay, so it's on the top 10 list. Number 8, The Hobbit, The Battle of Five Armies in 2014. There's 1,417 killed. Number 7, Matrix Revolutions in 2013.
Yeah, I would have thought that would have been on there.
Yeah.
1,647 killed in that film. Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers in 2002.
I did not expect Lord of the Rings to make the list.
There was those battle scenes, I
Yeah.
think, that you saw. I mean, I think maybe they're counting orcs and that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, there was a big battle scenes in there. So 1,700. Number 5, 300, Rise of an Empire in 2014. There were
that'd be big.
2,234. Now, number 4, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King in 2003. So this is a series that
I
is
guess
on
I
this
didn't
list quite a
realize
bit.
The Lord of the Rings was so violent like that.
Yeah.
But it was so long ago that I saw them.
But look at the jump so far from the bottom on this top 10 list to
Mhm.
we're at number 4. It's like almost tripled. The Sum of All Fears actually came in at number 3 of all time. So that was the 2022. Number 2, Dracula Untold. Now look at the jump. 5,687.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Big jump in numbers.
2014.
2014. Okay. The biggest of all time. Now this one, this might surprise you. Okay. Both the number and the film. And there's a reason that there's another movie that didn't beat it out. We'll discuss that. So Guardians of the Galaxy 2014, 83,871.
Wow.
There's that many actors?
Why? Yeah, because you just saw that many people like.
Yeah, there was some
Planets getting blown up or
scene
something.
where
Yeah, I never saw
mass destruction.
I never saw
didn't
the
see
movie,
it,
so
Wow.
but this is what was counted out. Now,
interesting.
in my mind, I'm going like, wait a minute, what about Star Wars? Like, shouldn't Star Wars be on this list? And for some reason, I guess the discrepancy was whether the kill count was on screen or not. Otherwise, like if you were just counting, based on whether you've seen it or not, Star Wars was upwards of over 300,000.
Wow.
And those are estimates because they don't really know how many people are on the Death Star. So
Right,
how do you
right.
count that? Not really sure.
Right.
So, but
Wow.
Guardians of the Galaxy, a huge jump. And that film was rated, can you guess?
PG-13.
PG-13.
It was
Yeah,
PG-13.
Man.
Because they want the kids to go watch it.
They do.
Yeah.
So partly explaining some of the data that we looked at, right?
But you can't watch a video about abortion.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
Think about that.
Educational.
So this is from gocompare.com. If you want to check out the data, you can go to that website and look for yourself how they counted and all of that. All right, now I want to read this quote from this same report that we were discussing from Parents Television Council. It said, Hollywood stands at the very nadir of hypocrisy. Why is that? So many voices in Hollywood, from actors to writers to producers, they loudly condemn gun violence.
Yeah.
But they are unwilling to condemn their own industry for promoting a culture of violence.
I mean, when I was in Canada over this last weekend, I'm telling you, I did a question and answer after the presentation. People would raise their hand and be like, why do Americans have so many guns? Like,
Wow.
what does that
We
really
all
have
want
to do
guns.
with the topic that we just saw? But actually, you know what? It does. When you promote and you see that all the time, I mean, it's like fashion, right? How does fashion catch on? People see it all the time, and then all of a sudden they take on.
But I thought that was very interesting, really stepping on their toes there,
Yeah.
because you can decry it all day long, but if you're not going to do anything about it, and you're just going to line your pocket with the proceeds from the films that are doing that, you don't have much to say.
That is.
There's a lot of
Very
double standards
hypocritical.
going on there, I bet.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, who are they crying to? The government to make changes? And once the government starts impeding on their industries, then it's a problem.
Yeah. Parents Television Council does cry for the government to make changes. They actually lobby the government on stuff like this to see standards raised and those kind of things. So I know they are a lobbyist group.
I mean, you think about like the movie Heat. You guys remember way back when there was a bank
Yeah.
robbery in Los Angeles and those
Yeah.
guys literally recreated the Heat scene?
Wow.
I mean, down to like, like they thought they were literally living out
Like
the
what they
movie.
were wearing and everything.
Yeah, when they went to their homes, they found multiple copies of that film at their homes.
Wow.
That was a big thing of their movies. So why isn't Hollywood jumping on, going like, listen, guys, we should not be making movies like this. We want to stop violence. Some violent act happens, a school shooting or something, and it's like they just point the finger at like, take away the guns. But
Yeah.
what about the inspiration behind a lot of that?
Exactly.
There's an interview I remember watching when Suicide Squad came out, and the actors were saying, like these aren't the best role models, and I would not want this role model for my kid. And it's like, then why are you making something like that, you
Right.
know?
Well, money talks.
Yeah. So the MPAA, how is programming rated, right? Well, here's a little statement. This is the idealistic part of the quote I'm going to share with you, okay? Raters adhere to general guidelines to determine a movie's rating. Okay, we know that. They adhere to guidelines, right? And that's how they determine how all this works out. Well, here's the rest of the quote. While raters adhere to guidelines to determine a movie's rating, as parents' opinions on sex, profanity, and violence evolve throughout the years, the board's ratings have adjusted to reflect those changing views.
That's exactly what I was thinking about earlier. It's like, how come there isn't just a certain template? Like, if there's over 100 deaths, it's stamped rated R, but that is changing. We've seen.
Yeah, there's a couple of things out there that it was interesting to me. Like, if you drop the F word more than once, it's an automatic rated R. You
But
can do
has
it
that
once,
changed?
and it can be in your PG-13 film. But if you drop it twice, automatic R rating.
Oh no, I can't believe they said it twice.
Oh,
Yeah.
a little poison.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't remember some of the others, but I remember reading that one. So now we're starting to see some of the issues with the rating system, right? The ratings evolve because society evolves.
But we're evolving because of what we're being desensitized
it's like this
to.
feedback loop, right?
Sure.
And
Well, I've seen 100 deaths before, no big deal.
so we see our current values getting reflected in the rating system. And this it leads to something that we call ratings creep. You ever heard that term? Ratings creep? Yeah, that's what they call it. And there's scientific evidence to actually support that phenomenon. So here's from the journal Pediatrics. This came out in 2014. Here's what they said. Parents become desensitized to both violence and sex in movies, which may contribute to the increasing appearance of both types of content by both parents and the raters employed by the film industry.
By the time our kids are grown, it's just going to be like anything is rated PG, you know?
Right.
The more parents watch, the more likely they are to not have a problem with it. And,
For themselves though, or for their kids? That's the thing.
well, with recommending it, because as they're watching, their standards are just like lowering, right? Because they're getting used to it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you think about some of those superhero movies that made it onto this list, they're pretty violent. But you see the little kids that have all seen these movies. I mean, some of these movies are just terrible. And so, yeah, I mean, that starts with the parents, I'm sure, starting to watch it. Then they don't feel, they're desensitized by it. They're numbed by it. Numbed might be a really good word. They're numbed by it. Then their kids are like, you can watch it too, But they don't have that sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to my in-laws' house one time, and their son, he was probably like 10 at the time, and just on the TV was playing the movie Sin City, and and we were all just conversating and stuff, but the boy, he was just all into it. And I look up and I see the dude like hacking someone's head off and holding it up, and I was just kind of like, and his dad was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be watching that, but he didn't turn it off. And it's just like, this is what our kids are growing up on, man.
There was cannibalism in that movie. There was, there was terrible things. Just absolutely, the name,
Yeah, that's a clue. All right, so I want to show you a clip from Dr. Dimitri Christakis. And he works with Seattle Children's Research Institute. He's an MD, PhD. He's like an expert in child development, okay? And so, because we know parents are desensitized, Hollywood's not really doing anything to curb it. Mm-hmm. So is there anything else at play? Listen to what he has to say.
Number 5, the news and information sources need to stop presenting the findings linking screen violence, virtual violence with real-world aggression as if they're controversial. There is a overwhelming scientific consensus that link is real and should be taken seriously.
So now he's blaming somebody else, throwing into the mix, right? The news media is presenting conflicting information to the public so that they have a hard time making up their mind or trying to figure out what reality is, And so it's like that with a ton of things, right? Yeah. And you look back years ago, right? One of the ways that the tobacco industry was working was through news and media, right? And they're like, okay, cigarettes are great for you. We'll put all this information out there. And then they hire people to do scientific studies, right? And those studies are skewed. And so out in the media, and they're confused because, well, cigarettes are fine for you because, more doctors use Camels than any other brand. And then the public's going like, oh, I guess there's nothing wrong with cigarettes, Mm-hmm. And then somebody comes out with a real scientific study, that's not skewed, and it says, no, cigarettes are bad for you. And then they're like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to think? You
Yeah.
know, you talk to just about anybody today and they're going through this same thing. They're like, well, I don't know if there's, you know, a link between violence and media, because they hear both things going on through the news media.
Yeah.
Probably because it's more common to get your information from the news source, then people aren't sitting there floating through
Medical
this.
journals.
Unless you have an interest in this topic, you're probably not just scoping out the internet for all the fine print in whatever study. And so, you know, this video, I've never even seen it, and I've looked for kind of things like this in this topic. So, you know, it's a whole lot easier to just throw the news on every single morning or Good Morning America, and, you know, they'll mention something and, you know,
But it shows you how the truth is getting buried.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because he's saying there is an overwhelming scientific consensus. It's not just like, yeah, we think there kind of is. He's like, no, this is real.
Right.
Stop saying that it's not. So have you ever heard this before? I'm not going to kill anybody because of playing a violent game.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've heard that too. And honestly, I'm going to, you know, if we're being realistic, I believe those people. I think, you know, the majority of people out there are not going to go out and kill somebody because they played a violent game or a violent video game or something like that. But I really like the direction that Dr. Brad Bushman takes. He's with BYU. And I want to show you just some highlights from some seminars that he's done on violence and games, okay?
I cannot tell you how many times I've heard this quote. I play violent video games and I've never killed anyone. The FBI actually keeps track of 8 big crimes. I'm not talking about all crimes. I'm talking about really serious crimes. 4 of them are violent: murder, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault. 4 of them are property crimes. These are serious things like burning down churches and stealing people's cars. What percent do you think are murders? Any guesses? 15%? 2%? 1/10 of 1%. Not of all crimes, of the big 8. If I wanted to find 4.7 murders, I would have to study 100,000 people in America for an entire year. You never murdered anyone? Big deal. It's incredibly rare. 1/10 of 1% of people murder. What I want to know, and I think what most parents are concerned about, they don't worry about, oh no, if my kid plays these violent video games, they're going to become the next Columbine killer. They want to know, wow, how do these games affect how they treat me? How do they affect how they treat their siblings, their peers, and others? How do they affect how they see the world? How do they affect how they see women? There are other effects of violent media beside whether you're going to kill somebody.
Wow.
What do you think of that?
He nailed it.
Yeah, you nailed
Yeah,
it.
that's
And that
perfect.
makes me think of the verse that Jesus said in Matthew, where it was basically like, look, you don't have to murder your brother, but if you're just angry with him,
Yeah.
you might as well have murdered him. So are we creating like verbal violence or verbal abuse in the same way of, yeah, maybe they're not going to go out and kill somebody, but their mistreatment of their siblings or parents is probably, you know, tripled or doubled or whatever.
I'm thinking of that news clip on the Fortnite video where the husband is playing the Fortnite game and the wife is trying to get in and he's like, hits her and she's like, "Ah, don't hit me." And she's pregnant with his baby and all this stuff, you know?
So I thought that was really well said and really put things into a really good perspective, because that's what we are all dealing with in everyday life, is how we're treating each other. So, all right. So I want to show you another clip from this same series. And here we go.
We can't randomly assign people to play violent or non-violent video games and then give them guns and knives and see what they do with them. You know, so researchers have to be very creative about how do you measure aggressive behavior. Here's a study we did in the Netherlands. The participants in this study were Dutch boys. They were about 14 years old. And we randomly assigned them to play a violent or non-violent video game for 20 minutes. After playing the game, they rated how cool they thought the players were in the games, how much they wanted to be like these characters. And then they competed to see who could press a button faster. And the winner gets to blast the loser with loud noise through headphones. They didn't have to, though. We didn't force them to behave aggressively. They could choose no noise. They could also decide how long the other boy suffered by how long they held down the duration button. So they could give the other boy really loud blasts of noise for as long as they wanted. And participants in our study were told that if they selected levels 8, 9, and 10, they could cause permanent hearing damage to their partner. They couldn't, actually, but you can imagine that a boy might think hearing noise levels louder than what you heard for extended periods of time could maybe have such effects. So here's some actual comments from these boys. I blasted him with level 10 noise because he deserved it. I know he can get hearing damage, but I don't care. So these boys are identifying with these violent characters, and it's clearly influencing their behavior. I told you about one study, but there are 140 studies showing very similar results.
Wow.
140 studies showing similar results.
That's
a
crazy.
lot of
It's
studies.
like a line that we're towing when we don't really understand what it means to kill someone. It's not always physical, just causing pain and verbal abuse, as you were saying, all equates to some level of destroying that person's being.
Makes me think of the verse in the Bible where it says, in the end of time, the love of many will grow cold.
Yeah.
How do you fix something when you're in an argument in a relationship? I mean, you know, you guys are married. You'll experience this someday, I'm sure, Kendi. But it's all not peaches and cream. I just break it to you there. You know, marriage is actually, there are some disagreements that happen in there. But how do you solve that disagreement, right? If we're constantly watching things how do you solve a disagreement? You know, like do what I say or I'm gonna pull the trigger. Then all of a sudden it's like that just puts you in the mode of like I'm gonna force you into my way of thinking or the outcome. Yeah, the outcome is gonna do this or die, and that doesn't teach society how to like work together. And I mean, I could just see like if you watch a lot of this stuff, it's got to have an impact upon your marriage. Has to.
That's exactly basically the same type of method that Moses learned when he was in Egypt, learning to be a ruler of Egypt, right? The methodology was force. Like, you don't do what we say, we're going to make you, right? We're going to put military might behind it. Then God extracts him out of that and puts him in an environment of servanthood. And he learns to lead, and by serving the next 40 years. It's like God is undoing what he was learning. It's like God saying, no. We're not going to lead by force. We're going to lead by being a servant, right? That's God's way.
One of the testimonies of the boys, he said, I pressed level 10 because I don't care.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of what you were talking about, how certain industries, they pay scientists to find, those positives and publish that. And it's kind of skewed. Then, okay, video games won't make you pick up a gun and kill someone, but it'll make you do X, Y, and Z. It'll make you more aggressive, maybe numb you to things that are going on and just more, aggravated about little things. It's like, when they released about wine, it's good to drink wine because of your heart. And it's like, no, why don't you just eat the grape? Effect. There's no side effects with that.
Right. So they use the first part of the sentence, but they leave out the part that there's other things that give you that same result.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to show you another clip from the same series. I think I have about 5 in total, but they're real short, about a minute or so.
So we did a brainwave study, and in this study, participants were either violent or non-violent game players. And we measured their brain waves while they saw neutral, negative, and violent images. The negative images are really important because they provided control with the violent images. So here's the neutral images, things like mushrooms. Here's the negative images, like a dead dog and a baby with a birth defect. And here's the violent images, like a man putting a gun down another man's throat and a man holding a knife against this woman's throat. Everybody hates these images. They don't like them. But these images are not in video games. But there's a lot of guns and knives in video games. So you can see here's the neutral images. They're the solid lines, like the mushrooms. Nobody is shocked by the mushrooms. But People see these negative images like the dead dog and the baby with the birth defect. And when people see those, you get a huge curve. And it doesn't matter whether you're a violent or non-violent game player, those curves are virtually the same. Non-violent game players, they see a man sticking a gun down another man's throat and a man holding a knife against a woman's throat. Wow, that's shocking. But look at violent game players. They're not nearly as shocked. They become numb to violent images. They're not shocking anymore.
That was genius study right there.
I'll tell you what, though, if my daughter saw the picture of the mushrooms, she would have a huge fight. She hates mushrooms.
That's hilarious.
It's a no-go for her.
But I'll tell you, I actually met a girl who was from South America, and she was from Venezuela, and she was talking about like the violence that happens in Venezuela. And so I asked her, like, you know, have you ever seen a dead body? She said tons of them. And I was like, really? Like, she's like, oh yeah, they're in the streets. When you walk around, you step over them and this and that. And I was just like, I've never seen one. I mean, I would literally like it would cause an action to me. And she says, you just get used to it. And that's what people that go through violent situations like that, they become accustomed to it. So the more that you're exposed to it, I mean, it's human nature. That's how people got through war times and terrible things. They're just used to seeing that.
Wow.
I don't think we were ever meant to be used to seeing that.
No.
Nope.
All right, so the next thing I want to show you is his 3 reasons why we deny the effects of media. I thought this was really good.
Cognitive dissonance is when we have conflicting thoughts, it causes psychological discomfort, and this is called cognitive dissonance. A person may say, oh man, I love playing violent video games, they're really fun, and then they read about some scientific studies showing that violent video games can be harmful. Well, those conflict with each other, so what do? These studies are crap. These researchers are idiots. The methods are flawed. The researchers are biased. Another reason is psychological reactance. People hate others telling them what to do. When that happens, there are 3 things that occur. Whatever somebody tells you can't have this, we want it more. We try harder to get it, and we aggress against the person who tries to stop us. Another reason is the third person effect. This is a very robust finding. People believe that media have a much stronger influence on other people than on themselves. We asked about 700 college students, does violent TV harm kids? Yeah, it harms kids. Does it harm everybody? Sure. Does it harm the average college student? You bet. Does it harm you personally? No way. This is the average of 700 college students, and this is the average college student. Why isn't the average of the college students equal to the average college student? It's because of this third person effect. It's very robust.
His delivery method was
Right.
just
I'm
brilliant.
gonna like keep that video in my pocket.
That's
and
right.
show
I
it to
know. I
people.
was like, wow, that was. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? And
Brilliant.
I think it doesn't have to be just this topic. I think we all need to realize whatever topic we're presented with, it's easy to go through the same steps. You know, somebody presents you something that's true, but you don't believe it's true. You're gonna go through that.
Like
all that
cigarettes cause
experience.
cancer. Not me.
Yeah,
My grandmother smoked till she was 90.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
funny thing is like there's so much evidence there, but
Yeah.
the fact that they could actually still convince the populace that cigarettes don't harm you
Oh,
is,
there's a warning on there. It's not for me.
yeah, right. You don't hurt other people.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's amazing how we all can fall into that trap so easily that it affects everybody but me. When you're younger, I say that at the age I am now, you don't think so much about the things that the things that you do, you could die,
Yeah.
right? Well, that affects everybody else, but you know, I'm invincible or whatever. You know, you'll do crazy stuff and you think you're gonna live forever, you know? And then I don't know, it's probably different ages for different people. For me, I was in my 30s. I was like, man, I really am gonna die. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I am not invincible, you know, there. And now I'm getting to that stage where I'm like real cautious. Like, I don't want to get up on a ladder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, man, people drive
I got
fast on the
kids.
interstate.
That's right. That's right.
I got to make sure I last, you
You
know?
guys are funny.
So it's,
She's still in that invincible.
Yeah.
but I
mind
just,
frame.
yeah. we can apply that to multiple parts of our lives. But I thought it was really, really relevant to this topic and how people will do that. Because I've gone out and spoken and heard these same kind of reactions. You know, it affects everybody but me, or, you know, those studies are not right, or they're not real, or what about this study that I read that supports my viewpoint? You know, we got to be careful not falling into that trap. What about pro-social stuff? And we've touched on this, right? Not all games are bad, right? But playing certain games will affect our behavior. So they also did a study on that. Like, depending on what kind of game that you play, how does that affect your behavior? So I want to show that to you now.
I would just like to say media are a tool. Like any tool, you can use it for good or you can use it for ill. And we've done also some research showing that media can be used in a positive way. In this study, college students played an E-rated game. It was a pro-social game like Super Mario Sunshine or Chibi Robo, where they like cleaned up pollution and did good deeds. Or they played a neutral game like Pinball and Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. Or they played a violent game like Tie 2 Crash Twinsanity. And then we told them by the flip of the coin, one of them would choose easy, medium, or hard tangram puzzles. And if you don't know what a tangram puzzle is, it looks like this. It's a shape, and you have to rearrange these shapes to make an object. So these are easy, these are medium, and these are really hard. And we told participants, if your partner solves all 11 of these in 10 minutes, they get $10. So if you're really nice, what you'll do is you will assign your partner easy tangrams so they can get the $10. If you're a jerk, what you will do is assign your partners these kind of tangrams, so there's no way they can get the money. And that's exactly what we find. Here's assigning easy tangrams, helpful, being helpful. Who assigned the most? Pro-social video game players. Middle, neutral. Least violent game players. Here's the jerks, who assigned really hard tangrams. Who assigned the most really hard tangrams? The violent game players. Neutral, middle, lowest, pro-social. So pro-social has opposite effects as violent video games.
Studies are genius, man.
Yeah, this guy's doing really good here. So I wonder if this applies to commenters as well. Those that are really harsh and mean and whatever. Like, I'm going to ask, are you watching violent movies or playing violent video games? I mean, I wonder, you know how some people approach, even in the comment section, something very simple like, hey man, you know, I heard what you had to say, and you know, I came across this study and you should check it out. Look at this. Yeah. That's one way to approach. The other one is like, dude, you guys are full of it, man. Yeah. Why are you even on the internet? You know what I mean? Like, that's totally like two totally different polar opposites. But I guarantee you, if you sat those people down that are really harsh in the comment section, they're probably playing all these games and watching all these crazy movies.
A lot of them will tell you.
Yeah.
This is my favorite game. It doesn't affect me.
Doesn't affect me. While they're punching out their mom or whatever like that. I'm playing them in the middle of a comment.
Okay, well, we should be careful not to make fun of people that are commenting on our channel.
Yeah, we're gonna get a lot of comments.
You don't want to incite their anger, just like you're talking about. You know, so we should be.
Those comments exist. Go look at them.
But yeah, we do get those kind of comments. We see both sides of the coin, right? All right. So now it's time to drop the bomb. Okay, so that stuff was good, right? What Dr. Bushman put out was really good. But now we're going to drop what I call the bomb. Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. This comes from the Journal of Adolescent Health. Here's what it says. The only effect slightly larger than the effect of media violence on aggression is that of cigarette smoking on lung cancer.
Well, that's all.
Interesting.
I mean, that's huge because
Slightly larger.
Cigarette smoking and lung cancer is so well established.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not arguing with that, right? I mean, every pack of cigarettes comes with a Surgeon General's warning. Hey, this can give you lung cancer, right? Yeah. Because it's been so well established in science. And they're saying this is the only thing that's has a larger effect, only slightly, than media and violence on aggression.
Wow.
So there's a huge
Evidence.
consensus in the scientific community that here it is, it exists. Just like Dr. Dimitri Kostakis was saying, like the news people, they are not doing this topic justice. They're not presenting the right information. They're presenting conflicting information to you guys all the time. But all the scientists know this thing is linked and it's well established. So
I wonder if that's for ratings or what. They're afraid to like make people angry, so they want people to keep watching the news. So we're not going to knock their violent video games or something.
I don't know. I mean, you wonder how many people in the media industry are going through the same things that he just pointed out. The 3 reasons that we deny, the effects of this stuff on us. So
I think it's
don't know.
politics.
It could be politics,
Who
yeah.
the masses are going for, who's paying who.
And I also think it's like drugs. We are addicted to the feelings, and the more heightened that those feelings are, then more ticket sales. And so, it's like they have to keep kind of pushing that button. If we're getting numb, then they're going bigger,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was having lunch recently with a sociologist when I was out on a speaking weekend in Texas. And she teaches sociology. She's a professor. And she told me the exact same thing unsolicited. Like I wasn't necessarily talking about this particular thing. And she told me that same exact thing. I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Because I had just come across that quote. I want to talk about 4 points to ponder when it comes to violence in the Bible, because a lot of people have noticed, like, man, the Old Testament has a ton of violence. Like, what's going on? Like, with all of that, how do we put that into perspective, and address that with today's world? So here's some things to think about, okay, for our audience and for our guys to discuss. Number 1, the entire Bible, from beginning to end, never deviates from the standard of justice as well as grace. Mm-hmm. Okay. Jesus is crystal clear, that evildoers will be punished in the judgment day. When he says it's time, he says, in fact, in Matthew, he says, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." That comes from Matthew 25:41. So Jesus is not shy even about this subject. He's like, look, there is going to be destruction, and for those who are insistent on holding on to evil and sin and their evil ways. This is not, of course, for people who repent and turn from all that, but there's not just grace in the Bible. There is justice as well. It's been that way from the beginning, and it will be that way until the end. And then, once it's done, it'll be done.
Yeah.
That's the end of it. God is trying to put an end to all of that stuff. And so when he puts an end to all of it, then we're done. And after that, it is eternal life, eternal bliss, happiness forevermore. No more pain, no more suffering, no more death, no more violence, none of that. And that's the way it will be. So that's point number 1. You guys have anything to say about that? I guess I should ask. I don't have to do all the
that's a good
talking.
point.
Okay. Number 2, the Bible is very clear about the unchanging nature of God. So this whole idea of God of the Old Testament, God of the New Testament, no. Yeah. It's God through and through. God does not change. In fact, James tells us that every good gift, hold on a second, let me get this right. James declares that every good gift comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. And we also know that Hebrews tells us in 13 verse 8, that Jesus Christ is the same. Do you know what he's the same? Yesterday, today,
and forever.
And forever, right? So if it's true, then that follows that there has not been, nor could there ever be, any shift in God's character throughout time. Okay, so it's the same God.
I think even when you see judgment in the Old Testament, God is always like waiting as long as he can, The entire world was thinking only evil continually and told no to preach 120 years. And then with, the little dialogue between Lot and him, will you save the city for 50? Yeah, I'll save the city for 50. Will you save the city for 20? God's like, look, I've reached a point where none of them were saving except you, so we better get out of there.
It's so true. I mean, the story of Noah is a perfect example of an Old Testament God that bore along with the people, and you know, he invited everybody to come on, get on the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, you're welcome to come in. He didn't immediately destroy it. He was like offering for 120 years. Noah preached at them to change their ways, and it says in Genesis 6 verse 11, the earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. It was the violence and things that caused God to.
You guys have been looking at my slides, haven't you?
No.
We're
But
actually
also-
getting to all that.
And when it comes to Jonah, you know, God changed his mind about judgment.
That's right.
When those people repented. So
And Jonah was upset.
isn't that grace?
Destroy him, God.
Yeah. God had grace and mercy then.
Well, you're
did.
talking about reasons for the violence, but there was still violence.
There was violence, yes.
So it's like I'm playing a video game and, you know, I give the character grace and I wait till the very end and then I smash him. You know, I gave him grace. I wanted them to run away, but they didn't, so I had to kill him.
Well, what if they are about to kill your child and don't you get closer to my child? All right, you didn't change your ways. I gotta protect my child. That's
Right.
the way it is with God, you know. He's protecting Noah and his family, protecting Lot.
And that corruption had spread to literally everybody but 8 people.
So it's like a means to an end.
Yeah, so it's like I think, you know, it's like cutting off the virus. You know, it's going to eventually destroy everybody. So
I think that's what we're living through, you know. God is not God is not slack in his return. He's long suffering. He's like, man, I keep seeing my people get persecuted and martyred, and he's not, you know, knee-jerk reacting and just destroying everybody. He's letting this go out until it says he has to shorten the days or else no flesh would be saved.
yep. Every time that the state has come in and said worship or die, like literally God has had to step in at that moment.
Yeah.
Every time.
All right, good stuff. Number 3, all of the biblical authors agree that God's love and God's judgment are actually 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
True.
Okay, so fire can burn. Fire can also provide warmth and comfort, right? It all depends on where we stand in relation to the flame. Both testaments reflect this truth, right? Each in its own way. So I like to think of it like this, you know, if we have allowed God to come into our life and purify us, go through that purifying fire, if you will, we can be in his presence, right? If we choose to not allow God to come into our life and purify us, then we are consumed, right? Because the fire will destroy us, right? But we have to let God purify us. So, all right. Point number 4. This is the last point. Jesus and the New Testament writers never complain about the violence in the Old Testament. Maybe that's a yellow caution light in our hasty dismissal of the Old Testament, right? Are we more morally sensitive than Jesus and the New Testament writers? Did they see something in the Old Testament that we miss? Right? So these are points to ponder, things to think about.
Yeah, I think it was because at the end of the day, it was like a way of life. And just because we don't see the same acts of violence in the New Testament as in the Old Testament, I think it's just because it wasn't recorded. I mean, there was still a whole world going on outside of what Jesus was doing that just wasn't recorded, but it is in history.
Yeah, it definitely is in history. So when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about it from maybe a slightly different perspective that you two are starting to touch on. And that's this. You get to Genesis, and after 8 verses in chapter 4, okay, see 1, 2, 3, 4, Genesis 4, 8 verses, and Adam and Eve, they had been decreed to leave the garden, and we read this. Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose against Abel his brother and slew him. One of the first fruits of sin was violence that we read about anyway. I mean, from the time that they left the garden and until the time that these guys were older, there's a lot of time there. But it's not, the details aren't recorded, right? We don't know, but we know this detail. And that was that Cain killed his brother Abel.
And God showed mercy and grace on him. put a mark on him that nobody would hurt
He
him.
did let him live,
Yeah.
didn't let anybody else kill him. So we see violence very early on after sin in the Bible. We also see this that you guys were alluding to. This is Genesis 6:11. It says, "The earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence." And it tells us of that time that man's thoughts were only evil continually.
Yeah.
I mean, that's bad, right? When like all your thoughts are just evil continually. So I'm thinking, okay, so sin enters the world, but before there was sin, there was no violence, right?
Yeah.
It was the way that God designed it. He designed a world without violence, without sin, without destruction, without any of that. It was Eden. And what God wants is to see Eden restored.
Which brings up a really good point of simply, if you can sit down and you can look at the media that you're watching or the games that you're playing, and you can say, I can actually picture myself doing this in heaven.
Yeah.
That should give you a barometer right there. I mean, if you're going to play Fortnite in heaven and run around and kill everybody and be the last man standing, you need to probably read the Bible a little bit more. But like I don't think anybody in their right Christian mind is going to say we're not going to enjoy those kind of evil things in heaven. We're not going to enjoy watching people die or get hurt. And that should tell you right now we should not be doing that here.
Yeah, it's like our carnality. We're living according to the lust of the flesh. Like,
That's right.
I enjoy it.
And
it's
Paul
fun.
says if you don't put to death the deeds of the flesh,
Yeah.
you will die.
Yeah, for sure. When someone asks, how do you reconcile, the violence in the Bible and in our lives? It seems like they're trying to use the Bible's violence as justification for them to indulge in the lust of their flesh, which is kind of scary. When just because your world is filled with violence doesn't mean you have to partake in it.
Right.
And Christ asks us to rise above that, rise higher, to have his light shine through you and hopefully impact the world around you and not have the world impact you.
Right. God has been very patient with the human race. Just because examples of God's followers have had multiple wives, that is not okay in our world setting. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't look at the Bible and be like, oh, well, Solomon had 700, so I'm going to go for it. That wouldn't make any sense. So you're hitting the nail on the head. You have to think of the cultural time that we live in.
What we have to think about too is when sin happened, something that was set in order that was never meant to happen, and that was death. God said the wages of sin is death. That is the reward of sin. So once sin comes on the scene, now death comes with it, right? And so we can sit here and say, well, I don't understand you, God. Like, why did you choose to do this with these people and these people and these people? And there were whole nations that were wiped out, and you told the Israelites to go in and take care of all these people, and God can really, he can turn that back on us, I think, very fairly and say, hey, look, you guys are the ones that chose this path. You chose sin. These are the natural consequences of all of this. It just is. It's like a natural order of thing. Like once sin starts, there's going to be death, there's going to be destruction, there's going to be violence, there's going to be all these terrible things that are set in motion that I never wanted to happen, but is a natural consequence and result. And the Bible tells us in Galatians, it says, whatever a man sows, that's what he'll reap. And so, humanity as a whole, we've sown a lot, and we're reaping a lot. The Bible says in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 9, it reads this: "And when the 1,000 years were expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them." I find it very interesting that just before everything wraps up, shortly before sin comes to an end, right? What does Satan do? He stirs up violence, right? He's like, getting all these people ready to go to battle. And what is the results of battle and war? People die. There are people that are injured. People lose in that situation. And then, of course, this is after the millennium has ended, and he's trying to get his troops rallied and take the heavenly city. by force. So sin and violence they've been together since the beginning, and they continue, right? This is the fruit. It's continued all the way down to the end. Nothing has changed, right? Nothing has changed about Satan and sin. It's all saying, you know what? The wages of that sin, it's death. It just keeps bringing death with it.
Yeah.
Everywhere it goes.
And again, you see Christ saving his people from being destroyed by the violence.
But I like the way that the Bible paints this picture for the redeemed in the end. It says, God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. There's a day coming where none of this stuff is going to be a problem anymore.
Amen.
And I want to wrap this up with this verse from Isaiah. I think is really beautiful. It's really painting a picture of what it will be like in heaven. It says, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise.
Wow.
I think if we want to be citizens of heaven, we should start living like that now. And to me, that's one of the strongest evidences for why we should put away violence from our lives. Is God never intended it in the beginning. When God restores things at the end, it's not going to be a part of that scenario either. So why would we want to participate in that now, right? Why do it in this time? We should try to strive to put away those things away from our lives and live according to that Eden restored mentality.
Amen.
And do a test, like if you are caught up in violent video games, or, you really love the violent movies or whatever like that, go for a period of time without any of that. And just see what does that do to your mood? You know what I mean? If you're really a Christian, you're really seeking a righteous life, pray this prayer as well. God, is this something that you want me to be engaged in? Do you want me to watch these movies? If you don't, I give you permission to come in and change my heart. I guarantee you that you will hear that still small voice being like, hey, this is not profitable, and could have a massive impact upon your just simple mood and the way you treat other people.
Yeah. What do you
Very
guys
good
think
point.
about this question? What are you preparing for? And whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you put on, what are you preparing for? If you're sitting down and playing a violent video game, what is that preparing your mind for? Or what is it doing to your mind
Good point.
versus doing something else?
Good
Yep.
point.
Like battle.
That's a very good point. All right. Well, that has been another episode of LED Live. Is there a link between violence and media? I think after watching these things and going through this information, we can conclusively say, yes, there is. Does that mean that we believe or think that, by playing a violent video game or watching a violent movie, you're going to go straight out and start killing people? No, we're not saying that at all. But we are saying that the science is clear that it is linked to aggression, and that we can see this in our everyday lives. It can make us more aggressive at home towards our spouse or our kids or our coworkers or what have you. There is a link there, and we need to be careful how much violence we consume. And I don't think it should be a part of our lives, because we are trying to go to heaven, right?
Amen.
And if we're going to heaven, we didn't have violence in the beginning when there was no sin. We won't have violence in the end when there is no sin. So we want to, as Kendi said, prepare. What are we preparing for now? We want to prepare for heaven. So
Amen.
that is our admonition to you, is let's live like we're citizens of heaven today. So thank you for watching, and we hope you have enjoyed this segment of LED Live, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care, and thanks for watching.